Okay, welcome to the third block of the Advanced Strength and Power Athletic Development Program. We're going to talk you through the exercise we'd like you to do in this block. And as before, some of the exercises will be repeated and some of them will be new. We want to repeat it just for some engagement and obviously to challenge you on your movement, but remember the whole point of this is to increase your movement vocabulary, that when you start loading up some exercise that you have a nice array of movement built on the foundations of the work. So regress and progress as per ever, how you feel fit. So we might see some differences in the athlete today, and then I'll make progressions and regressions just appropriate to what the athlete is in front of me. Remember, the most important thing is that you feel the benefit, you get the right movement mechanics out of it, and if it's right for you, it'll look good. If it's wrong for you, you might have some limitations, so you have to regress it. So it's all about finding the right balance. Okay, so let's talk you through the exercise we want to do today. So the first one is a bit of a change, so it's a split squat. So basically it's loading up a phase of the lunge, if you like. So if you have dumbbells at home, fantastic. If you don't, then you're just going to have to do a body weight. But the principles here apply. So if you just stand back to the start again, so we're just to talk to viewers through. So make sure your hips are, make sure your feet are a bit wider than hip width apart. Then make your step forward. Okay, too often people in a split squat make too much of a narrow step, and the base support is so demanding stability-wise that the range becomes limited, right? So you've got a good space of support here, and it's a very simple movement. You're just dropping the back knee towards the floor. Controlling it, of course, all the way. 10 repetitions on each side, and coming down and coming up. Okay. Of course, the same thing as if you have no weight, you get wide, you step, no weight, control it on the way down, and then you can drive up, pushing through the heels of the front foot. Same thing here, obviously loading it will be a nice way to do it because it's quite a safe exercise to do. And same thing on the other side, wide base support, take a step forward, drop your knee to the floor. Good, just control that, so a little bit on the last rep, the knee just hit the floor ever so slightly, so just make sure you're controlling that knee as it goes towards the floor. So a little graze or a little centimeter or a few millimeters off the floor is what we're looking for. Okay, so the next one is a walking lunge overhead. You've done this one with me before, and maybe the last time you found it too advanced. This week in this block, maybe try and see how you get on with this. So again, just to repeat, so hand is over the head, but this time the progression is we're walking 5 repetitions with the leg over. So you lead again with the left foot if the right is overhead, and then you continue 5 repetitions with that. You can continue, yeah. So if you don't have the space, you can do what Ronan's doing here, is just turning after two repetitions, and you do a final one then on the left side. So you do 3 sort of on the left, one with the right overhead, and then you swap it over and you do 5 as well. This time you lead with the right, perfect, that's good. So we get a nice balance, then each side is working equally. And again, when you step forward here, make sure you're stepping forward with that right or left side forward. So you're wide, and then you're stepping into that position here that's not too narrow on your stance. Just make sure you do that, because you don't want to challenge this from a stability point of view when you've got a weight over your head and everything else. So just make sure the hand is locked up over your head as well. If you find like this is too much and you can wait, like obviously of course lower the weight, you can do it with hand up, and sometimes if people have any shoulders, do it with hand up alone with no weight is long enough to feel it benefiting you already. And it's just that sort of getting the body to overcome what's happening in the upper body from the lower limbs. It's a bit of a challenging the movement here we're going to start throwing weight around in a few weeks, but this is a nice progression to see where you're up to. Okay, so into this reverse Nordics. You would have all heard of Nordics before. So this is a reverse Nordic. Hands across your chest. You don't need someone to hold on here generally, because the center of mass stays very close to the base of support, so there's no need to hold on. And he's sitting back as low as he can, again loading up the quads in particularly here, sitting back as low as you can. If you find like you're going into too much of an arch, you see a little bit of an arch happening here, so go back again. So he's very good here, very good, and that's the moment he needs to come up. Yeah, so don't go too far back into where you're loading up the spine, and the only way you're coming back out of it is in you go into the spinal flexion forward. You don't really want that. You want the quads to contribute to majority movement, and hip flexors of course, and then you use them to get you out of it rather than compensating from the spine and the back, and you're coming into a territory there we don't need to go into. So good range, but not excessive range until you feel it in the quads, and then come back out of it again. Okay, so the repetition there is only 6 reps, so it's 10 on the others and it's 6 on this one, because it's quite a challenging rep. This is also a challenging lunge, and a lunge you may not have done before, right? I call it a transverse plane lunge. So you basically make an L with your feet as you step back. Now, we might have to regress this exercise if you're not comfortable with it. So take a step to about 7 o'clock or 5 o'clock, and you're making it, see the way the L, so if I drew a line from here, and then drew a line where they meet, you'd see a nice L pattern coming. That's what I want you to get into. And what I want you to do is load in as much as you can onto that right leg, keeping this leg straight. Okay? If you ever had an ankle injury or a knee injury before, you might see a compensation. What you typically see is that trail leg here is staying bent. So you have this kind of thing going on. You're never into it or out of it. So I want you to really work on that range. And if you feel like that leg is not being locked up or not straight, I want you to just stay in here, sit into that range, and then come out of it. Okay? And if you find the toes coming up, that's another compensation. So there is a lot of things going on here, but a very, very beneficial lunge to do. A good lunge for a sport, but it's very multi-directional. And the mechanics and the motion and the bones, we won't go into it now, but it's very, very important that an athlete can do this in a multi-directional sport. So if you feel like I'm not loading up here at all. I don't recommend loading up here until the movement looks right, until that leg is nice and straight, the foot remains flat on the floor. You're getting good ranged in onto the leg you're loading onto. You don't need to progress this from a weight point of view. Just progress it from getting into the motion and coming out of the motion, and then perhaps maybe a bit more speed into the motion if you feel like you're competent on it. But first point of call, new exercise for you. Challenge yourself with the movement and then see where you go from there. Okay. Next one is a 3-way RDL. So if you get an RDL, again, so it's a supported leg that we said we were going to go on. The weight is in the opposite side, and then, sorry Ron, if you want to show us, you know what you're doing. Toes on here, then you lean forward, so like we did before. Now the 3-way is we're going left, so we're going left of that front foot and right of the front foot. Yeah. Remaining in a nice good postural position. Light weight here, it doesn't have to be heavy. I'm not encouraging heavy weight here. And I'm loading up the hamstring in 3 different planes of motion. There are 3 hamstrings, and each one of them loads a different different part of each hamstring. Good. Yeah, all the way down, all the way up. A good back posture. So why the weight is really light, and why the weight is really light will drive a lot of load through the hamstring, is that you're talking about lever arms here. We have a long lever arm because of the range you're going through and where the weight is. So that long lever arm doesn't mean that he's lifting 8 kg, which is on the dumbbell. He's lifting far more than that because of the demand we're stressing on the body. So don't be fooled by what weight you have in your hand. The mechanics drive the internal load in the system. Right, so, and how you lift that weight will determine whether you lift more or not. So don't be fooled by the weight, it's how it's lifted. So a few centimeters out from the center of mass is a lot of newtons to overcome. So don't be fooled by how much weight you have, just see how it feels, make sure the mechanics of the movement are there. You're going to get load in 3 planes of motion on hamstring, which often doesn't get done, and very beneficial for a sport that does require those motions. Okay, so there are the 2 posterior chains that we'd like you to do on this one, and now we're going into our lateral pogos, part of the power and jump and plyometric activities. Okay, so we've always tried to challenge the plyos. They've been in the last 6 weeks, but each time, each block, we've kind of challenged the motion in the lateral and the pogos, and this one is a challenge because it's now laterally moving. Hands are across your chest when you do it. So it's taking out the contribution of the upper body and making all the demand of the lower limb, but you're trying to move left and right as you do plyometrics, as you do the pogos. Okay, so off we go. So toes are up, toes are up, toes are up. Good contact time, good height. That looks good. Safe for him to do. If you were starting to do a long contact or wasn't getting any height, I would recommend you do it on the spot. But if you can challenge yourself, you are getting good height, you are getting low contact time, then do it like Ronan's doing it here. So again, it's just 5 on the left, 5 on the right, and very good for a sport. Again, going back to what the demands are going to be like when you return, is you're going to have to change direction. Change of direction is going to require the mechanics and the forces that you can generate here in the pogos, because you're going to have to step off and load up on the right or load up on the left if you want to laterally shift. And the same thing applies here with the pogos. And good foot position, good force into the floor is going to transfer into your sport. Okay, another transfer into your sport is a clock face jump, right? So standing in the middle of a clock. Okay, so imagine you're in the middle of the clock and all the numbers are around here, so 12 o'clock is in front of us and 6 o'clock is behind, and then 3 and 9 are to our left. We're making a jump on each stop basically. To 12, to 1, to 2. You'll go through it, yeah, and then walk yourself back in, take your time into the center of the clock, out to 1 o'clock, and then walk yourself back in. That was like between 1 and 2, I'd say, that one running. Into 2, good, yeah, good. Now into 3 o'clock, rotate, perfect. So as you can see there, run is rotating with the movement, which is very important. And if you look at the mechanics of the drive, so how he has to generate is changing the body to generate force in different planes of motion, which is very important. Now we're on to our 6, I think. So you have to do 6 from the right shoulder turning and also now the left shoulder turning. So the 6 is twice, 2 stops to 6, but only 1 at 12. So when you get to 11, it finishes. That's good. And again, challenge yourself each time on how far you jump, but the most important thing here is how you land. I don't want you to land in this position here where you can't catch yourself and absorb the landing. You're landing in that half squat, quarter squat sort of position each time. So it's a nice safe landing on each of the movements. And then finally at 11 o'clock. Good. You can use your hands here to generate the force, but if you do want to challenge yourself, hands across your body, that will demand more of the lower limbs, but use your hands. And again, the regressions here are really how high you jump and far you jump, or further more than height, I suppose. But make sure the landing mechanics are right. Be governed by not how much force you can absorb or exert. Be governed by how much force you can absorb. So that as long as the landing mechanics are good, you're probably at your right limit in terms of how far you're jumping. That's the third block discussed and all the exercises shown. We'd like you to do a second set and a third set, again resting 2 minutes in between. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you see the progressions and regressions, and as always, just make sure the movement looks good first. Don't progress anything where you feel like, just because I want to get load into the movement, this is going to further benefit me. It's far from the truth. It's making sure the movement looks right and is right before progressing with any load or complexity. I hope you enjoyed it and see you soon.